The two suns hanging in the purple sky of Verdantis, 7 painted everything in shades of orange and gold. 17-year-old Tyler Brennan wiped the sweat from his forehead and went back to his work. His hands moved slowly and carefully over the enormous fossilized skeleton that lay before him like a monument to a forgotten age. Dust clung to every ridge and groove of the ancient stone. He brushed it away with the kind of patience his grandmother had taught him back on Earth. "Be careful there, human boy," said Keeper Vessa, the alien scientist in charge of this dig site. Her body looked like it was made entirely of living crystal that caught the sunlight and threw it back in 1,000 different colors. "That fossil is worth more than everything on your little planet combined." Tyler wanted to say something back but kept his mouth shut. He had learned that lesson the hard way during his first week here. 6 months working on this alien research station had taught him plenty about his place in the universe. Humans were the newcomers to the Galactic Consortium. The aliens saw them as children playing at science. Too emotional. Too impulsive. Too wrapped up in feelings instead of facts and data. But Tyler knew something they didn't. His fingers traced along the massive rib cage of what the aliens called a Valkyrax. The name meant something like Sky Guardian, in the dead language of the Dragarath people who had lived here millions of years ago. As his skin touched the cold stone, he felt it. A rhythm. A pulse buried so deep that no machine could ever pick it up. It was like putting your hand on someone's chest and feeling their heartbeat, except this heart had been silent for 10 million years. Or so everyone thought. The dragon stretched out across the excavation site like a crashed spaceship. From its nose to the tip of its tail, it measured almost 50 meters. Its wings, folded against its sides and turned to solid rock, could have covered a football field. According to the data files Tyler had read, these creatures weren't just animals. They had been the protectors of an entire civilization. The Dragarath had lived alongside them, worked with them, maybe even loved them. Then something terrible happened. Some kind of weapon or natural disaster had swept across the planet and turned every living thing into stone in the blink of an eye. "Tyler, stop daydreaming," Vessa called from across the site. She was already walking toward the next fossil, her attention moving on like it always did. "You need to check the plant containers in Sector 7 before the evening cycle." "Yes, ma'am," Tyler said automatically. But he didn't move right away. His hand stayed pressed against the fossil. The pulse grew stronger. He could swear it. When night fell and the suns disappeared below the horizon, the station's alarm system suddenly burst to life. A computerized voice announced that a massive solar storm was approaching. Tyler joined the other workers as they rushed to protect the smaller fossils, covering them with energy shields that would keep the radiation from damaging the delicate stone. But when he looked at the Valkyrax, he realized the problem immediately. The dragon was too big. The shield generators they had simply couldn't stretch far enough to cover something that massive. The other aliens didn't seem worried. To them it was just old rock. What could a storm really do to it? But Tyler felt different. Without really understanding why, he walked up to the fossil and placed both his hands flat against its chest. He closed his eyes and let himself sink into that feeling his grandmother had spent years helping him understand. She called it the gift, though Tyler had never been comfortable with that name. It made him sound special, and he had never felt special. Just different. Back on Earth, he could touch a dying plant and feel where the life was struggling. He could put his hands on a sick animal and sense the places where energy wasn't flowing right. His grandmother said their family had always been able to do this, going back generations. She said they were connected to life itself in a way most people had forgotten. He had thought the gift would be useless here, surrounded by nothing but ancient death and stone. He had been wrong. Green light began to flow from his palms. It spread across the fossil's chest like roots growing beneath soil. Tyler felt warmth building under his hands where there should have been only cold rock. "What in the name of the void are you doing?" Vessa's voice shattered his concentration. He opened his eyes and saw her standing there with her scanning device pointed at the dragon. Her crystalline face was doing something he had never seen before. She looked afraid. "My bioscanners are picking up cellular activity." "That's impossible." "That's completely impossible." Tyler turned around and his stomach dropped. The entire research team had stopped what they were doing. Aliens of 6 different species stood frozen, all of them staring at him with expressions that needed no translation. Confusion, wonder, fear. He looked back at the dragon fossil. The stone chest, which had been cold and dead for millions of years, was glowing. Faint but definitely there. A soft inner light that pulsed in a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. Something ancient was waking up. Absolutely not. The human stays locked up until we figure out what he did. Commander Rax stood in front of Tyler's detention room door with all four of his arms crossed over his chest. The Korthan species didn't believe in taking chances, and they especially didn't believe in things they couldn't explain with numbers and data. Anomalies made them nervous. Tyler was now officially an anomaly. Tyler sat on the hard bench in his small room and stared out through the reinforced window. He could see the excavation site from here. Scientists from half a dozen different alien species swarmed around the Valkyrex fossil like ants on a dropped piece of candy. They had every scanner and sensor in the station pointed at the dragon. Lights blinked. Machines hummed. Data streamed across holographic displays that floated in the air. But none of their instruments could tell them what Tyler already knew. The dragon was calling to him. He felt it like a vibration in his bones, like a song played just below the range of hearing. It pulled at something deep in his chest, the same place where the gift lived. The connection between them was growing stronger with every passing hour, and being locked away from it made his skin itch and his thoughts scatter. The door to his room slid open with a hiss. Vesa stepped inside, her crystalline body catching the artificial light and scattering it in patterns across the walls. Tyler had learned to read her moods by the way the light moved through her. Right now she looked conflicted. Colors swirled and shifted beneath her surface like oil on water. "The Council has made their decision," she said quietly. "They're sending you back to Earth. They've classified human unpredictability as a contamination risk to the research program." Tyler stood up fast enough that the bench scraped against the floor. "I can help. I can explain what's happening. Something is alive in that fossil, Vesa. I know it sounds crazy, but—" "That's the problem right there," Vesa interrupted. She moved closer, and her voice dropped even lower, as if she was afraid someone might hear. "You say you know, but you don't have data. You don't have measurements or readings or proof. You feel something. You sense something. The consortium doesn't work that way. We operate on measurable science, not on gut feelings and mysticism." "It's not mysticism," Tyler argued, but even as he said it, he knew how weak it sounded. How could he explain the gift to someone who thought the universe could be completely understood through machines and mathematics? How could he make her understand that some things were real even if you couldn't see them on a scanner? Vesa looked at him for a long moment, and Tyler thought he saw something like sympathy in the way her light pulsed. Then she turned and left without another word. The door sealed behind her with a finality that made Tyler's heart sink. But Tyler wasn't going to give up that easily. He waited until the station's night cycle began. The lights dimmed to simulate darkness, and the corridors grew quiet as most of the research teams went to sleep. Tyler stood by his door and closed his eyes, letting the gift expand outward like ripples on a pond. He could sense the life signs of every person on the station. He could feel the patterns of their movement, the rhythms of their patrols. And he could feel the gaps. The blind spots in the security coverage where sensors didn't quite overlap. The moments when patrol routes created small windows of opportunity. He slipped out of his room when the moment was right, moving through the shadows like he used to do back on Earth when sneaking out to explore the woods near his grandmother's house. The gift that let him sense life also made him better at avoiding detection. He could feel where people were looking, sense when attention shifted away from him. The excavation site was empty when he reached it. The dragon lay exactly where it had been, but somehow it looked different now. Less like stone and more like something sleeping. Tyler approached slowly, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "I hear you," he whispered, kneeling down and pressing his forehead against the dragon's massive stone snout. The surface was warm. Stone shouldn't be warm. "I don't know if you understand me. I don't even know if you're really awake or if I'm just imagining all of this. But I want you to know that you're not alone anymore." He closed his eyes and remembered everything his grandmother had taught him. She used to take him into the forest and show him how trees talk to each other through their roots. She explained how mushrooms created underground networks that connected entire ecosystems, letting plants share nutrients and warnings. She taught him that life wasn't a bunch of separate things competing to survive. It was all one big web, all connected, all part of the same living system. Tyler reached down through the stone floor with his mind, feeling for that web. He found it. Even here, on this alien world where everything had died millions of years ago, there were still threads of life running through the planet's crust. Microbes that lived in cracks in the rock. Chemical reactions that mimicked living processes. Ancient root systems that had turned to stone but still held the memory of what they once were. He pulled that energy up and channeled it into the Valkyrex. The dragon's eyes, which had been clouded over like frozen ice for countless ages, cleared. Just for a second Tyler saw through them. He saw consciousness looking back at him. He returned every night after that. Each time the changes became more obvious. Stone that had been hard and cold for millions of years began to feel softer, more flexible. He could see scales forming where there had only been rough rock. Bones that had crystallized began to show hints of flexibility. Scientists would have said it was impossible. Dead organic compounds couldn't just reassemble themselves at the molecular level. But they were. On the seventh night, Tyler pressed his hands against the dragon's chest and felt a rhythm. Not just the pulse he had sensed before, but an actual heartbeat. Slow. Weak. But real. Tyler, stop. He spun around to find Vesa standing at the entrance to the excavation site. Her crystalline form was flashing colors he had never seen before. Alarm. Fear. Wonder. All mixed together. You have to stop this right now, she said, moving toward him with her scanning device held out in front of her like a shield. The readings are becoming catastrophic. Do you understand what you're doing? You're not healing a fossil. You're bringing it back to life. You're reviving something that's been dead since before your species existed. It deserves to live, Tyler said simply. The words felt true in a way that didn't need explanation. It was a war beast. Vesa's voice rose higher, and for the first time since he had met her, she sounded genuinely scared. These creatures were designed to protect, yes, but also to destroy. If you bring it back and we can't control it. A sound cut through her words. A crack, sharp and loud, that echoed off the walls of the chamber. Then another crack. And another. Tyler and Vesa both turned to look at the dragon. The fossilized chest cavity was splitting open. Light spilled out from inside. Not reflected light, but bioluminescence. The kind of glow that came from living things. The kind of light that hadn't existed on Earth since the age of dinosaurs. Oh no, Vesa whispered, backing away slowly. Oh no, no, no. This can't be happening. The dragon's eyes opened. They weren't the clouded crystal that had been there moments before. They were blazing amber, bright as molten gold, filled with ancient intelligence that had survived eons of darkness. And they were filled with hunger. The alarm system screamed to life with a sound that made Tyler's teeth hurt. Red emergency lights flooded the excavation chamber as the Valkyrax tore itself free from the stone that had held it prisoner for 10 million years. Fossilized rock crumbled and fell away like dried mud. The dragon stretched its wings, and Tyler watched in awe as they extended outward, blocking out the artificial lights overhead and casting shadows that swallowed half the chamber. Through the connection they shared, Tyler felt what the dragon felt. It wasn't thinking in words or even images. It was pure sensation, pure need. Hunger. An emptiness so deep and terrible it felt like falling into a black hole. The creature wasn't hungry for meat or blood. It was starving for energy itself, desperate to fill a void that had been growing inside it for longer than human civilization had existed. All personnel evacuate immediately. Commander Rax's voice thundered through every speaker in the station. Tyler could hear the panic underneath the military tone. Military Protocol Omega-7 is now in effect. This facility will be completely sterilized in 30 minutes. I repeat, 30 minutes. The dragon moved. Not randomly, not in confusion, but with terrible purpose. Its massive head swung toward the nearest power conduit, and its jaws opened wide. When they clamped down on the thick cable, electricity exploded across its scales and blue-white lightning. The dragon didn't flinch. It drank the energy like water, pulling it directly into its body. Emergency lights throughout the chamber flickered once, twice, then went dark. Backup systems kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. Vesa grabbed Tyler's arm hard enough to hurt. Her crystalline fingers were cold and shaking. It's going to consume the reactor core. Do you understand what that means? We have to leave right now. But Tyler couldn't move. The psychic feedback from the dragon overwhelmed everything else. He experienced the world through its senses, felt what it felt. Confusion. Terror. The dragon had closed its eyes while protecting its people from an attack, expecting to wake up in moments. Instead, it had opened them to find everyone gone. The entire civilization it had known, the keeper it had bonded with, the purpose that had defined its existence, all erased. The hunger wasn't just about energy. It was about the emptiness of waking up to find that everything you loved had turned to dust while you slept. Everyone's evacuating, Tyler said quietly, his voice barely audible over the alarms. They're going to destroy it. Tyler, look at it. Vesa pulled harder on his arm, trying to drag him toward the exit. It's already consumed half the station's power grid. In a few minutes, it's going to breach the main reactor. When that thing explodes, it'll wipe out everything within 100 kilometers. That includes us. The dragon's head turned. Those blazing amber eyes found Tyler through the chaos and locked onto him. The moment their gazes met, Tyler felt something click into place in the connection between them. Recognition. Understanding. A word that wasn't really a word pushed into his mind, more like a concept wrapped in emotion. Keeper? The dragon thought he was its keeper. The person it had bonded with. The one it had tried to save. I'm not running, Tyler said, pulling his arm free from Vessa's grip. Then you're a fool, Vessa replied. But even as she said it, she didn't turn and leave. She stayed right there beside him, her crystalline body pulsing with colors that showed her internal struggle between logic and something else. Something that maybe even she didn't fully understand. Through the chamber's reinforced windows, which were now cracked and spider-webbed from the dragon's emergence, Tyler saw movement in the sky. Ships. Dozens of them, appearing out of nowhere as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The consortium fleet had arrived. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in weapon systems that were already beginning to glow with gathering power. They were charging up for a planetary bombardment. They were going to turn this entire region into molten glass. The Valkyrex raised its head and roared. The sound was like nothing Tyler had ever heard. It was deeper than thunder, louder than a rocket launch, and it carried emotions that hit him like physical blows. Challenge. Warning. Desperation. Bang. A cry that hadn't been heard since the time when dinosaurs walked the earth. The kind of sound that spoke of an age when creatures like this ruled the skies of their world. Tyler looked up at the ships gathering overhead, then at the dragon tearing through power cables and its desperate need to feed, then at the timer counting down on every screen around the chamber. 28 minutes until they sterilized the facility. 28 minutes to do something impossible. He had to prove that what humans could do, this connection to life that his grandmother had taught him, wasn't just primitive superstition or emotional thinking. He had to show the consortium that they had forgotten something important in all their advancement in technology. Something about understanding life instead of just measuring it. Tyler walked forward. Each step felt like moving through deep water. The dragon's hunger was a physical presence in the air, pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. Those jaws could snap him in half without effort. Those claws could tear through steel. The electricity crackling across its scales could fry him instantly. He reached up and placed his hand on the dragon's snout, right between those burning amber eyes. Easy, he whispered, though his voice was shaking. Easy now. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we can figure this out together. You're not alone anymore. The dragon's hunger crashed over him like a tidal wave, so intense it felt like drowning. Every instinct screamed at him to pull away, to run, to save himself. But Tyler kept his hand exactly where it was. He didn't pull away. He pushed back through the connection, sending everything he had toward the terrified creature in front of him. Calm. Understanding. And most importantly, hope. The Valkyrex lowered its enormous head until it was level with Tyler's face. Time seemed to stop. The alarms faded to distant echoes. The red emergency lights dimmed to nothing. For a moment that felt like it could last forever, Tyler and the dragon existed somewhere else entirely. Somewhere beyond the physical world of steel and stone. And then Tyler saw. Not with his eyes, but with something deeper. The dragon's memories flooded into him like water breaking through a dam. He saw cities of black glass that rose toward purple skies. Towers that spiraled upward in impossible geometries, their surfaces reflecting light that sang. Yes, sang. The architecture itself produced harmonious frequencies that filled the air with music. The Dragorath people moved through these cities like living art. They were beings made of crystal and metal, elegant and strange, their bodies catching light and throwing it back in patterns that seemed almost alive. And everywhere dragons flew. Not as beasts of burden or weapons of war, but as partners. Companions. Each dragon bonded with a keeper, someone who could communicate through the psychic resonance the creatures naturally produced. It wasn't ownership. It was friendship. Then the vision shifted and Tyler felt his heart clench. War came. The sky split open and ships poured through, vessels from an enemy civilization whose name was lost to time. They had a weapon. Something terrible. A pulse that swept across the planet like an invisible wave, and everywhere it touched, life turned to stone. Not death exactly, but something worse. Instant fossilization. Living things frozen mid-breath, mid-step, mid-thought. The Valkyrex fought. Tyler experienced the battle through the dragon's memory, felt the desperation as it tried to protect its keeper. A young Dragorath whose name translated roughly to Shulten. They had been together since the dragon hatched. They had grown up as one mind and two bodies. The dragon would have died for them without hesitation. And in the end, that's what it tried to do. The final memory hit Tyler like a punch to the chest. The petrification wave approaching. Shulten falling. The dragon pulling its dying keeper into its chest cavity, curling its body around them like a shield, trying to preserve just one life as everything else around them turned to eternal stone. And then darkness. Complete silence. An abyss that should have lasted forever. Tyler gasped and pulled back from the vision. His face was wet. He was crying without realizing it, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You were trying to save them," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You weren't a war beast. You were a guardian. You were trying to protect someone you loved." Through the connection, he felt the dragon's emotions shifting. The hunger was still there, but now Tyler understood it differently. The creature wasn't just consuming energy mindlessly. It was operating on pure survival instinct, drawing power the only way it knew how after waking from an impossible sleep. But underneath that instinct was grief. Confusion. The dragon was drowning in the terrible reality that everyone it had ever known was gone. 10 million years gone. Turned to dust while it slept in its stone prison. "I can help you," Tyler said, and this time his voice was steady despite everything. Despite the fleet gathering overhead. Despite the countdown timer showing 20 minutes left. Despite the fact that he was a 17-year-old kid from Earth trying to reason with a creature older than his entire species. "But you have to trust me. Let me show you a different way." He closed his eyes and reached through their bond. He shared his own memories this time. Not of cities or technology, but of the forests near his grandmother's house. The way she had taught him to sit quietly and listen to the trees. How she explained that trees weren't separate individuals competing for survival. They were connected underground, feeding each other through massive root networks. Mother trees sharing nutrients with their children. Sick trees supported by healthy ones. An entire ecosystem working together through connections invisible to the eye. He showed the dragon how life on Earth balanced itself through countless relationships. Predator and prey. Flower and bee. Fungus and root. Nothing taking without giving back. Everything flowing in cycles that sustain themselves naturally. The Valkyryx's breathing slowed. Its massive chest rose and fell in a steadier rhythm. Tyler pressed both hands against the dragon's chest and channeled his gift deeper than he ever had before. He reached down through the stone floor, through layers of ancient rock, searching for life. And he found it. Even on this dead world, life persisted. Microbes living in cracks in the bedrock. Bacteria feeding on minerals. Photosynthetic organisms growing in the canyon walls. Geothermal vents pumping heat from the planet's molten core. All of it connected. All of it part of one system. He showed the dragon how to connect to this web. How to draw energy from it gently, sustainably, like roots drinking from soil. Feed from the planet itself, Tyler urged. Not by destroying but by joining the cycle. Like you did before with your world. Like you were always meant to do. The dragon's eyes widened. Something like understanding passed through them. Slowly, tentatively, the Valkyryx released its grip on the station's power conduits. The cables fell away, still sparking. For a moment nothing happened. Then Tyler felt it through their connection. The dragon was drawing energy from deep below, from the planet's natural systems. Slowly. Carefully. Harmoniously. The station's lights flickered once, twice, then came back on. Normal white light replacing the red emergency glow. Vessa stood nearby with her scanning device, her crystalline body flashing colors of absolute shock. The bio readings are stabilizing. It's not just consuming anymore. It's metabolizing properly. How is this possible? Tyler opened his eyes and looked at her. Humans don't just solve problems, he said quietly. We listen to them first. A holographic display suddenly erupted in the center of the chamber. Commander Rax's face appeared, blown up to 3 meters tall, his forearms crossed and his expression furious. Tyler Brennan, step away from that creature immediately. Fleet bombardment begins in 60 seconds. The Valkyryx growled low in its throat. Tyler felt protective instinct flare through their bond. The dragon was ready to fight to keep him safe. No, Tyler said firmly. He said it to both the commander and the dragon. He looked up at the massive creature that had lived when humanity's ancestors were still tiny mammals hiding in burrows from actual dinosaurs. If they're going to judge us, then let's show them what we can really do. He grabbed one of the dragon's scales and pulled himself up onto its back. Tyler, that's completely insane. Vessa shouted. Probably, Tyler agreed, settling himself between the dragon's shoulder blades. But everyone's called me primitive since I got here. Might as well lean into it. The Valkyryx's wings unfurled. Great membranes of scale and muscle caught the air with a sound like rolling thunder. And together, human and dragon launched into the sky to face the fleet. The consortium fleet hung in the darkness of space like a swarm of angry metal hornets. Tyler could see them even from this distance as the Valkyrex carried him upward through the atmosphere. Dozens of warships, each one bristling with weapon systems that glowed with gathered energy. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust wide open. Enough to turn the surface below into molten glass. Tyler clung to the dragon's neck, his fingers gripping scales that were warm and alive under his hands. The wind screamed past his ears as they climbed higher and higher. His heart hammered in his chest, terror and exhilaration mixing together until he couldn't tell them apart anymore. Through their bond he felt what the dragon felt. Pure joy. After 10 million years trapped in silent darkness, it was alive again. It was flying. Moving through its natural element with a freedom it had thought lost forever. All vessels, weapons hot. Commander Rax's voice crackled across every communication channel. Tyler could hear it through the station systems even up here. Targeting the creature. Collateral damage to the surface facility is considered acceptable. Wait. That was Vessa's voice, high and urgent. Commander, the creature is demonstrating controlled behavior. The human has established a stable connection. It's not acting like a mindless. The human is contaminating proper scientific protocol with primitive mysticism. Rax cut her off sharply. All ships, fire on my mark. The targeting lasers painted the Valkyrex from a dozen different angles. Red dots danced across its scales. Weapon systems locked on. But the dragon moved. It wasn't just flying anymore. It was dancing. The Valkyrex twisted through three-dimensional space with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. It slipped between targeting locks before they could solidify. Wings folded tight against its body as it dove through a gap in the fleet formation that Tyler wouldn't have thought was wide enough. It rolled, spiraled, climbed at angles that defied understanding. Every movement spoke of intelligence, of tactical thinking, of a mind that understood exactly what it was doing. Through their bond, Tyler felt the dragon's satisfaction. It had been born for this. Designed by millions of years of evolution to own the sky. No computer targeting system could track something that moved like liquid thought. Hold fire. A new voice burst across the command channel, sharp with authority. All vessels, hold your fire immediately. Tyler recognized that voice. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Hayes. One of the only high-ranking humans in the consortium military. He'd seen her face in news broadcasts back on Earth. Admiral, the creature is, Commander Rax began. That creature just performed a 17-vector evasive maneuver, Admiral Hayes interrupted. War beasts don't do that. Mindless animals don't fly like that. Someone explain to me right now what I'm looking at. Tyler closed his eyes and reached deep into the bond with the dragon. He gathered up everything he felt, everything he understood, and shaped it into something like a message. Not words. Words were too limited. Instead, he formed it from pure emotion and imagery. Memory and sensation. Truth that went deeper than language. The Valkyrex understood what he was trying to do. Through their connection, Tyler felt the dragon take his message and amplify it. The creature's natural psychic resonance grew stronger, broadcasting outward like a radio signal, touching every ship in the fleet. And suddenly everyone could feel what Tyler felt. A guardian separated from its people. A civilization lost to the grinding passage of time. The desperate, hopeless effort to save just one life while everything else died. The endless darkness of being trapped between death and life for 10 million years. And now, finally, connection again. Understanding. Purpose. Not an ending but a second chance. Silence filled every command channel. Tyler opened his eyes and saw ships powering down their weapons. Just a few at first, then more. The glow of charging energy systems faded. Then a proximity alarm shrieked through the fleet communications. Sharp and urgent. Research vessel Nightingale is in trouble, someone shouted. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7. Venting atmosphere. Losing altitude fast. Tyler's head snapped around. He could see it now. One of the smaller research ships, damaged during the panic when the dragon first awakened. It was tumbling through space, trailing debris in frozen atmosphere. Its engines were dark. Emergency lights flickered across its hull. And it was falling, caught by the planet's gravity, being pulled down into a descent that would end in fire and destruction. Life signs show 47 personnel still aboard, another voice reported, clinical and cold. Impact in 90 seconds. The Valkyrex didn't wait for Tyler to ask. The dragon folded its wings and dove. They fell through space faster than Tyler's mind could process. The wind became a solid thing, pressing against him so hard he could barely breathe. Through the bond he felt the dragon's absolute focus. This was what it was meant to do. Not destroy. Not kill. Protect. They caught the tumbling research vessel with a precision that seemed impossible. The dragon's claws closed around the ship's hull, massive talons gripping carefully, finding purchase without punching through. Tyler felt the strain through their connection as the Valkyrex spread its wings wide, catching the air, fighting against gravity and momentum. The dragon's muscles screamed with effort. Its wings beat once, twice, 3 times. Each stroke arrested a little more of the ship's deadly descent. Slowly, impossibly, the fall became a controlled glide. The dragon carried the damaged vessel like a mother bird carrying an egg, gentle despite its enormous strength. It brought the ship back up to stable orbit and positioned it near the fleet's medical frigate. Only then did it release its grip. Tyler looked around at the assembled fleet. At the weapons that were now completely powered down. At the ships just floating there watching. Through his earpiece he heard Admiral Hayes speak. Her voice was quiet, almost wondering. "Stand down," she said. "All vessels stand down completely. I think we just learned something important about humanity's place in this galaxy.